Good evening, everyone. My name is Alan Smason, and welcome once again to NOLA Theater Talk. This is part of the NOLA Theater Folk Facebook group. We broadcast there as well as to the theatercriticism.com Facebook page and my own Music Lovers 169 YouTube channel as far as that goes. Tonight, we have a very interesting gathering. We have members of the Actors Equity Liaison Committee. These are people who are from New Orleans, generally have been associated with the Actors Equity Union and represent not only the members of Actors Equity, but also membership candidates. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between members and candidates and what the whole system is involved and how it got set up and what it's intending to do. And more importantly, we're going to talk about some of the rules that they have instituted in order to safely bring back actors, stage managers, etc., into the theaters once they get ready to reopen, hopefully in phase 3 or 4. And we'll be able to see more and more about that. I am anticipating that John Bostic, who has been a longtime member of the committee, will be joining us tonight. He's had some computer difficulties, so unfortunately, I'm going to make allowances for that and just ask him if he's listening in or if we can text him or whatever. People that we'll just go ahead and start the program without him, and hopefully he'll rejoin us. I cannot understand why he's having problems, but again, we're going to try to wing it without him. In the meantime, I'm going to bring in our first of our members of the Liaison Committee. Let's bring in Sherri. Marina, how are you doing, Sherri? Nice to see you tonight.
I'm
All
great.
right, and again, I know that it looks to me like John is trying to get his devices connected. So we'll see if he's once he enables his mic and his camera, we'll be able to get him in.
Okay.
Also joining us this evening, we're going to have another fine actress, if you will, and she's going to be joining us as well, and that's going to be Meredith Long. Like to have Meredith come in as well. Meredith, how are you tonight?
Great. How are you doing?
All right, we're going to talk about the drinks in a little bit. And John still keeps coming in and leaving, so we're going to leave that alone. And then, of course, everybody remembers seeing him on the program not that very long ago. But let's welcome Sean Patterson back to our show. We want to thank you for being here, Sean. And I think that he's working, and we do have now John Bostic.
Hey, there's John.
Hey, I'm on my phone. I don't know what it's going to look or sound like. So
You sound great.
It sounds
It's
fine
the
to me.
future, John. We can use all our devices.
So John, you being the person who's probably had the most seniority, we wanted to kind of have you talk a little bit about first as to all of these new rules that came in. But before we start that whole thing, first off, how are you all doing? I mean, you all are members of Equity, and there's nobody in the entire union nationwide who's working right now. So, well, I mean, Sean, in terms of your day jobs, maybe. Now you're working as a teacher, right, Sean?
I am.
Sherri's working as a teacher.
They did just clear a couple. Well, they did just clear a couple of locations for contracts.
Well,
so,
two.
yes,
the Barrington and one other location.
I did say a couple.
Yeah, and a 500-seat auditorium with 163 seats is not exactly a lot of people seeing theater.
But it's something. But yes, I do. I teach. And I feel like I've been working consistently through the summer. So there's been very little interruption.
And Meredith, you and Sherri both teach as well, right?
Yes.
Now, Sean, you're at Metairie Park Country Day.
I am, and I teach online for. I also teach a couple of camps online for Tulane, for their Little Lyric, Junior Lyric, and musical theater intensive.
And at St. Martin's we have Meredith.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And you've been at there a few years now, right?
Since 2015. Yes.
Yeah. So and again, Sherri, you're at what school?
At Dillard University. I've been there since 2001.
Wow. So you're hanging out with the big boys, as it were. Congratulations. So now all of you, notwithstanding John, I'm not quite sure. Do you have a go-to day job as well, or are you basically just working as an actor?
No, I'm a programmer during the day.
Okay, so again, one of the things that I think is important for people to understand too is that despite the fact that people have a penchant and a desire and are professional actors, that sometimes it becomes necessary to supplement your incomes with day jobs. That the New Orleans climate is wonderful for theater, but it may not necessarily be able to support you in the long run in terms of keeping food on the table and a roof above your head. As far as that goes, because the numbers of opportunities here are a lot limited more than they would be in a larger town. That doesn't mean that they're any less important. That there are some wonderful challenges that are here and great opportunities, but still, it's not Chicago, it's not Los Angeles, it's not New York, obviously. Anybody disagree with that? No. Okay, good. So as a result, they I know that New Orleans has been sort of specially treated. And John, you can talk a little bit about the area where we are is considered the central area. Is that correct? That the central region runs New Orleans? John, are you able to hear me?
That's really broken up. So, no, I did not get the question.
Okay, so the question was, the group that runs Actors Equity, which was founded in 1913, but
Yes.
the group that runs New Orleans is the central region, correct?
Yes, out of Chicago.
Right. And it's been that way for how long?
Since around 96. We were in the eastern region back in the days of the Beverly Dinner Playhouse. And when the Beverly burned down, there wasn't any work left. And the eastern region came in and said, well, there's nothing really we can do. So you can either move or you can come up with your own solutions. And that started kind of a spiral in New Orleans for the equity actors. Like Becky Allen was one of those, Janet Shea, a lot of really talented people. And they had to make their own opportunities. Southern Rep didn't come along till 89. And Tulane Shakespeare didn't start hiring equity until the 90s. And so what happened was the Central Region got a new director, Catherine Lamke, and she asked for the New Orleans area. And so they started trying to write a code for down here, but nothing really happened until Luther Goins was assigned here in 2004. And so he started working, trying to meet producers, working with actors, finding out what the area was. Katrina hit. I was the only one here, and after that, he and I became really close. We put together a committee and wrote a contract that was specific to this area.
Yeah. Now, I know that it was started from Katrina, and everybody, I do have a copy that's posted on the Equity website, which is the NOLA agreement, as they call it.
Yes.
And then this is it, right? This is it, the agreement. Now, this is the more recent one. This agreement began in 2014 and actually expired in 2018. Is that correct?
Well, that was that iteration. And there's another iteration now from 18 to 21.
Okay.
It renews every 3 to 4 years.
So the one that was in place right after Katrina, 2006, 2007, that expired before the 14, or was that good for 7 years?
Yes, right after Katrina, they had kind of a small agreement, but the real NOLA contract started in 2008.
Okay.
And we became a liaison city in 2009.
So what does that mean to have a liaison committee? What does that mean essentially?
There are 28 liaison areas. That means there are 100 or more actors in that area that are active in the union and want to pursue, and stage managers, don't forget stage managers, that are there wanting to foster a theater community. And ours started in 2009. We had to do paperwork, write petitions. I think Meredith was very active in that, Carol Sutton, Janet Shea, and also we used Baton Rouge actors. We had 86 people here and 36 in Baton Rouge at the time, and we became the 26th liaison area.
And so now, what other liaison committee areas are near to us? Houston would be one, maybe?
The nearest ones are Atlanta and Houston. Houston is the closest.
Okay.
Dallas is actually closer than Atlanta. We are in the central region. We're the only one not really that's this far south. Kansas City, St. Louis, and then us. Texas is west. Mississippi, Alabama's east. Tennessee's east. And really what a liaison area says is that the equity is going to assign some funds and special attention to that area. We get a membership meeting annually where the leadership comes and talks to members. They also will give us some funds to do a little bit of social work, a little bit of outreach, and we have special voices in our new structure. We're going to have constitutional conventions, and one of the delegates will be from each liaison area. So we call it the New Orleans liaison delegate. And so right now we're in the process of trying to put together paperwork, and I'll be running for that rep position, and I'm sure some other people will too. And we'll elect a delegate to go to the national convention and speak on behalf of the members here.
That's fantastic. So now, have there been other people that have been that we would know of who were already elected nationally like that?
The only other nationally elected person from this area is our counselor, Michael Newcomer, and he's on the Central Council as a principal actor.
So, but there's never been any other people from New Orleans who have been chosen other than
we've never had anyone run before Mike.
I got you. Okay, I got you.
But he was elected by the national delegation, whereas our committee is elected by the local delegation.
And let me just tell everybody one more time that in the event that you want to leave a comment tonight, please go to StreamYard.com/Facebook to give Facebook permission to make your comments. So we've already gotten one comment that I saw, and maybe you can explain it. I'm not quite sure. Rebecca Prescott said something about AH, Luther Goins. I don't know what an AH is.
Luther was
Hi,
wonderful.
Rebecca.
Anyway, so we now again, anybody who wants to ask a question, I asked earlier, anybody has any questions about what is going on with equity or whatever, they should certainly ask us if we can through the comments, and we'll try to get to those as soon as we can. It gives us an opportunity to communicate directly with everybody. Joel Rainey was also on, said that he's given a lot of love tonight, so there you go. So again,
thanks, Joel.
In order to be able to get your name up, though, you have to give StreamYard permission to do so. If you're a member of our Facebook theater folk group, Facebook has some rules about interfacing with third-party applications, et cetera, and they want to make sure that you're not being, let's say, used against your will, and they're doing something that way. So that
they want to be the ones to use you against your will.
Right. So that's another story.
They want exclusive rights to use you against your will.
Okay.
So we just mentioned that. So now, again, if I may go back, John, and y'all can chime in whenever you want. But I wanted to go back to that piece that we had up earlier, because it was kind of interesting. The central agreement, it says that there are 4 salary tiers based on the number of performances and hours of rehearsal for which the members employed, that chorus musicals are allowed with a weekly health payment. Now, that's a lot to expand, and maybe we should just take part of that at one point. Again, it's for actors and stage managers, and there are 4 salary tiers. So without going into, I guess, the specifics of what the salary tiers might be, can you maybe just explain how does that work in terms of the different structures there?
The New Orleans area theater contract was organized by number of performances per week. When it started, a lot of theaters only did 2 performances a week, some of the small theaters. And so it had tiers of 2, 3, 4, and 5 performances a week.
Gotcha.
The 2 show a week doesn't happen anymore, so that's been dropped. So it's tiers of how many performances you do a week: 3, 4, 5, or 6.
Now, what about rehearsals before you start to do the performances? Does that figure in there as well?
The higher the tier and the higher the pay, then the more hours per week you can use the actor.
Okay. So in other words, if you're doing a Friday, Saturday, Sunday on that three times a week, you would be at one level. But if you were doing a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you might get a little bit more hours to rehearse.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And again, there's I assume that there is within the union, if you happen to be a union person and you're hired within a company, the company is required to pay the actors from Actors Equity at a probably a more substantial rate than you would somebody who's just joining the cast as a regular person, right, without being in the union.
I typically the Actors Equity sets these minimums, and so I think typically unless it's an unusual situation, an equity actor makes more than a non-union actor in this city.
Right, and I would expect that. I mean, you all are paying dues for the equity membership, and you're establishing yourself as a professional. So I would think that the fact is that they're limited too. Are they not in terms of the numbers that they can have? You can have as many actors as you can afford. Yeah.
But you have to have a stage manager if one is available if you have 3 actors or more.
Okay. So stage managers come with 3 or more. That's interesting to know. And again,
an equity stage manager. I mean, you would need a stage manager regardless, but an equity stage manager.
So if you had a stage manager, that the equity stage manager would replace the other stage manager, I assume. Is that correct? That you wouldn't have 2 stage managers, right? You just have one stage manager.
The stage manager on the production would need to be an equity member as well. Would need to be on contract.
Right.
Yes.
It's not like someone is losing a job to a union member. It's just that role would need to be filled by a union member or someone who is on contract.
It's interesting,
So you could put a non-union person on a union contract. So if you had a stage manager you work with all the time, you could give them the union contract. But it's saying that there must be a union stage manager contract after so many actor contracts.
Gotcha. All right, now we're going to take time to take a little break before we get into that because I'm going to get into stage managers in a second. I actually prepared a Moscow Mule tonight for everybody, and it's a really legitimate Moscow Mule in a solid copper cup with a solid copper straw, and again, made with lime juice, vodka, and a little bit of ginger beer. And that's pretty much it. It's a simple, very refreshing summer drink. Sherri, what are you having?
I'm so boring tonight. I am just having a little ginger turmeric iced tea.
In a Jersey Boys cup.
In a Jersey Boys cup.
That's it. It's very nice. Nice theme there. Meredith, what are you having?
I guess I'm being boring as well, but actually I steeped some lemongrass in my garden. Then I went out and picked some mint in my garden. And so it's just mint and there's a little bit of ginger in there. So it's very healthy little lemongrass tea.
All right. We accept all kinds here. John, I hope you brought something to the party. A little bit more substantial than lemongrass tea. What did you bring?
Not really. I have green tea with a little bit of extra stuff in it. So But so mine's not very exciting either.
Well, Sean, are you going to save me here? Am I going to be the only one drinking?
I am going to save you.
Great.
I am going to save you. So I am having, this is me right here. This is me. I am having, whoop, let me turn it that way. So I am having limoncello LaCroix water with vodka, and I got the really good vodka in the big giant bottle from Costco. And I want you to know that I've mixed it up in my official K&B glass.
K&B
so
purple.
I'm boosted, but I still know my roots.
Yeah,
So,
you do. Yeah, you're right. That's it. So let me just go on. Let me just go on again and ask, and maybe Meredith, you can answer the question because I want to kind of throw things around. Can you tell me, for the people, I know what they do, but what does a stage manager do? We know what actors do, but I don't know that a lot of people know what a stage manager truly does and what their responsibilities are.
They do everything. The God, they do everything. They call the show, most importantly. They help with the scheduling. They write down the blocking. They're right there with you. They take over the show after the director has directed the show. They're there for you. So they're extremely important.
So would you say that again, they're different than actors insofar as they're basically executing what the director wants to do? But do they work for the producers essentially, or do they work for the I mean, in other words, where's their allegiance? Are they working for the front of the house, the box office, where they get paid, or are they working more towards making sure that your job as an actor is safe and things of that sort? Or are they doing both?
I think both. Both. But they are there to protect us to make sure everything's going okay. Although we have deputies, the actors all vote on somebody who's going to take notes and make sure everything's running smoothly during rehearsal period. And once we're in production. But yeah, they do both. They make sure that show is looking good and running correctly.
And again, you said call. So a lot of people, they're responsible for making sure the actors are on stage on time and that the orchestra is ready to go, et cetera. If there is an orchestra, if it's a straight play without an orchestra, obviously not a musical. But in other words, they are responsible for making sure that everything gets done, as you said, and that they do everything else. So it is unusual to have a director hanging around, isn't it, after he set a show? Yes. It's very rare, isn't it? A lot of times I go to shows thinking, oh, so-and-so directed this, I'll see him in the show. And, of course, he's never there. It's always, a surprise if the director's there.
A lot of times they're there, but they're just hiding in the back, Alan.
Well, maybe. I guess hiding depends on how good or bad their work was, too.
It's always a surprise to see the director out there after you're, like, running the show after a few months. If you're on tour or something and they show up and you're like, God. Totally straight on a few things.
Well, and I guess it's the director's notes that everybody's fearful of at that point. Go ahead, if you don't mind, Sherri. Give me a little bit of. I hope you know a little bit of the history of the union. And you know anything about how it got started in 1913 and why?
Oh my goodness! And I feel like I've read it. I don't know if I can tell it to you though.
Does anybody want to help her out and give her an assist here?
Help, please help. Lord.
John.
Well, the actors' revolt. The conditions in New York were quite abusive. People would get hurt. They didn't have any. They could be dropped from a show for no reason. They could not be paid. The conditions were very dangerous and abusive, and there was no security. And so there is a famous book called The Actors' Revolt about the 1913 strike. So the actors went on strike in New York and formed a union. And originally, there were separate groups, chorus, principals, and stage managers. Over time, they've all come together. But it really was a safety issue. Originally, it was producers didn't care if you broke your leg. They didn't care what your hours were. They were not concerned with what you were going through. And so you still can see that in non-union houses, some non-union houses across the country. You can see the unsafe working conditions, no sanitary areas, lack of privacy, no job security. For instance, a friend of mine was in a production of Oliver, and he went to work one day, and there was chains on the building, and Equity paid to get him home and paid out the rest of his salary from the bond. But you don't have that. But the non-union people that were involved with the show were just stuck trying to figure out how to get home. So really, the whole idea was to protect these artists from being abused and being hurt.
And I guess child labor laws were employed too. Eventually, maybe not at the very beginning, but that they've been used now. That a lot of the child actors, I know that they're not allowed to work more than 3 times a week generally, and that's why they have so many swings for the child actors. That a lot of times one role, let's say in trying to think what's a more recent one that we had, Billy Elliot. They had several Billy Elliots and several of the other characters that they had that were on stage a lot, and they would swap it around. So those sorts of things. It used to be in the old days you'd have Annie, one Annie. You remember? There was one very famous, several very famous people who did the role, and it was just one person throughout the week, 8 shows a week, and they don't allow that anymore. And I don't know if that's specific to Actors Equity or if it's something enacted in the labor laws, etc. But again, I know that that's part of the protecting. And you're going to talk a little bit about some of the recent rules that the Actors Equity Association has, essentially the union has come up with to protect actors. Can you enumerate? Do you have that list with you in front of you, John, about the?
And are you talking about in terms of
COVID-19, right? We were talking about, yeah.
Well, Equity is actually on the front line right now of trying to protect performers against COVID. So they've hired Dr. Michaels, who was a infectious an infectious disease expert who worked under the Obama administration, and he is putting together guidelines because their job is to protect us, is to keep us safe and healthy. So the first thing that they have done is come up with 4 just essential guidelines: that the area must have the virus under control, that there must be a way to test people, isolate people, find them out quickly so that the whole cast doesn't end up infected before they know it, that there must be a plan of safe and sanitary conditions, and that there must be a collaboration between the union and the producers to ensure safety for all involved, crew, stage managers, actors, etc. And it all, of course, has to meet the guidelines of the area. What they're doing now is they're taking each area and trying to be more specific. There's on the Actors Equity website, there's a producers resource area, and in there is a COVID-19. And one of the things that they have done is they put together a testing document, which is on my computer, not available here on my phone, and it has approved tests that have come out, and it will continue to grow, but it has a list of tests that are approved, the time of testing, who needs to be tested, how often, when the results need to be due, what to do in case of somebody coming up positive, and safety measures for testing. It's very specific, and it will continue to grow. It was released on June 24th. And then recently, they just put up a checklist for producers of things to think about before you write your safety plan. And it's got about 10 items on it, and it says, so do you have do you have a plan to meet your area's guidelines? Do you have a plan for testing? It's just a checklist to give some producers some direction. But right now, they get about 50 applications a day from producers, and they're going through them line by line. An interesting thing is a large number of those don't ever mention the actors or the stage managers, the crew. So immediately they have to say, okay, let's address these issues. But they one of the things that they do is they try and give guidance as to where there's some things failing, like maybe what is your air filtration system, or how are you going to separate the dressing rooms, things like that. So they're working really hard, and they have had to lay off a lot of staff because we have zero money coming in and a lot of money going out. So they really do want producers to succeed, and they really do want producers to be able to do these things. Some of the safety things they get are 50 pages long, and
Right.
some are 5 pages long, and that doesn't make one better than the other. It's
Right.
just how long it takes to get through it.
So what I'm looking at right now is the epidemic must be under control with effective testing, few new cases in the area, and contact tracing. Individuals who may be infectious can be readily identified and isolated with frequent, regular, and accurate testing with speedy results. The way we audition, rehearse, perform, and stage manage may need to change, and the venues we work in may need to undergo changes in order to reduce the risk. And efforts to control COVID-19 exposure must be collaborative, involving Actors Equity members, employers, the union, and all others involved in the production of theater. There must be collective buy-in and ongoing evaluation and improvement of health and safety practices. And so that's part of what you just basically enumerated. Since it's not on your computer anymore, I figured maybe I'd show it. So there you go.
Yes, that's it. And so they're trying to make that more and more specific. But they're doing things that trying to help producers, and then producers are trying to grab it from the other end and come back with some really great answers. And it's a lot of work. And as I said, their staff is greatly reduced, and they're trying to also at the same time deal with the fact that people's health insurance is expiring. The unemployment's going away. What are we going to do in August when everybody's rent's due and there's no more of this supplement in the areas? So it's such a tough time, and I think they're really trying to stay on top of it. And as we saw, Massachusetts has been deemed more or less under control. The virus is under control, so the Berkshire Theater Festival and the Barrington Stage have been approved. Barrington is doing a one-man show, but they took out all the seats.
163 were left out of 500.
The entire theater.
Yeah.
And
163 seats,
Berkshire's
you can't make any
outside.
money, though. I mean, 163 seats, you cannot make any money as a producer having people come into you, and that's and obviously they will probably sell out, since they normally would sell maybe up to 400 or 500 seats, you would think. So, obviously 163 going to be, but the point is, you don't want to have a theater selling seats to a one-man show for $100 a seat if you can avoid it,
Right.
in order to break even. And
Right.
So there's a point of diminishing returns for a producer. And I guess to a certain extent, a lot of people who are right now trying to execute COVID-19 procedures for health and safety reasons are also looking at the bottom line. Just like you said, the PPP packages that they have are going to be non-existent in another month after August is over, although they may have extended another month or so into September, October. But when those go, what happens? What happens to those people who've been artificially kept on a payroll by some sort of act of Congress or what have you. And what happens to those people when unemployment, it doesn't become a possibility anymore? When and this thing it has the possibility. I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but this thing has a possibility of, at least in Broadway terms, of going into January. And I think most people who are pragmatic are saying, even if it goes into January, it's probably going to take another 6 weeks beyond that to even get Broadway back up to its capacity to where it was, to get everything started again, rehearsals and people, available. So all of that is just a big question mark right now. And yeah, go ahead,
Alan. There's a reminder is that all of us are speaking as individual actors, not as members of the union per se. We're not speaking for the union, but one of the things in all of that is that those theaters in New York are Victorian. The spacing, even from getting people in, is difficult. The ventilation, there's no way it's going to make the filtration system expectations of COVID. So, and then when you're dumped out onto the sidewalk with 1,000 other people from 1,000 other theaters, Broadway's got a long road.
right? But you think that the local theaters will recover first?
I would think so. My guess would that they will. It's okay. So if you think, let's just take Le Petit or Southern Rep. Even though Le Petit is an older theater and it's jammed together, or Southern Rep is a small theater, I think there's a lot more potential there, because 125 seats at Southern Rep could be done in the outside, or they have video projection. They're not trying to make a $10 million a week budget, and Le Petit, I think getting people in and out would be much easier than, let's say, the Neil Simon or something in New York. So I think it will be easier for regional theater to come back first, but we don't make the union as much money. So the union will still be working hard, struggling to get the big boys back.
And I guess I have to ask the question, in terms of theaters right now, we know Southern Rep had been struggling, and we know, of course, Le Petit's doing better, but they were in financial straits a few years ago. Hopefully, not having those kinds of difficulties. But we're at a point now where theaters are really in precarious financial straits, and the question is, having to put out more money for safety and the precautions that we have for COVID, et cetera, which they can probably afford less now than at any other time in their history. I guess the question is, what is the likelihood that some of these people may end up not being able to afford having equity members hired on a regular basis? Is that a possibility that their financial status may prevent them from hiring?
Honestly, that's a possibility, but I think the question, Alan's even bigger than that.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of studies. I've been really, really active in the union for a while, and what we have found is that where arts funding is high, theater thrives. We have extremely low arts funding, and what we have goes where it should go. Nobody misunderstand me. It goes to jazz, Cajun music, and the African American art that has come out of here that is unique to us. It goes to promoting what is special about Louisiana, and that is where it should go. But our arts funding, even for that, is extremely low. Our jazz musicians can go to Europe and make in a few months what they can't make in a year here. All of us as artists need to be working on getting better funding from the state for all artists, for the visual arts, the dance, the opera, the theater. But if you look, like DC put a what was it, 2 cent tax that is going straight to arts funding in DC. It's going to be, and it is a permanent tax for all of their art facilities. It's divided up. San Francisco last year passed a referendum where there is a small percentage, very small percentage, but it all goes to the arts and supporting the theater and the visual arts and the music in the area. And Minneapolis has that. Kansas City has that. And these places, artists buy houses. They put their children through school. They have cars. They do it all in the arts. And it's because they have the funding is there. And so really my dream is that in the next 10 years that that we can work on arts funding in the state.
Sean, anything to add to that? I mean, you've been one of the better known working actors.
Any of that better than John.
Yeah. But no, seriously, you're one of the better known actors in town, and you probably work as hard as anybody else does in terms of the numbers of weeks that you're employed as a member. Do you feel optimistic about
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Do I feel optimistic? That's a great question. I do feel optimistic. However, I will say that I know very few people who make their living exclusively as an actor in the theater. Many people make their livings exclusively as actors. However, that's usually because they're working in the theater and they're working in film and television. Or I know people who make their living in the theater, but it's not exclusively as an actor. They're also writers and directors and producers, and many times they wear those hats all on the same project. You're talking to 3 educators and a programmer, all of whom work as actors. So, would it be nice if we could work consistently and make a living wage? Yes, it would. However, it's very unlikely that you're going to work long enough on a project to sustain that living wage, because what's going to happen is you're going to do, I've been very fortunate in the opportunities that I've had in the city, but I will say that I've only worked on 2 shows that have run longer than, performances longer than 6 or 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. And that's in 20 something years.
Yeah.
Now, I will
like the Ricky Graham shows that went on and on and on and on and on. Were those?
Sure. Well, one of those was a show that Ricky Graham and David Cuthbert and Dane Evans wrote called Thoroughly Modern Millennium, and that ran for a year at the old True Brew. Now, some weeks we only did 1 show a week. Some weeks we packed them in and we did 5 in a weekend. But and that was before I was a member of Equity. But the opportunity to run a show for a year and make a guaranteed living wage every week is unlikely in this market, because most shows run. We have some theaters that run a show for 2 weekends.
Yeah, 2 weekends.
You rehearse longer than you perform.
3 weeks is normal for life of a show here. 3 weekends.
And so it's really it's a really hard financial position to be in, to say that we're going to have a Broadway type revenue to sustain a market of actors. But you can work and you can make good money. I just don't know that you can work enough. There are times I'm enjoying a break right now because of COVID, where last summer I worked on 6 different projects between the time that school let out in May and the time school started in August. Now, 2 of those were directing projects, and 1 of those was a camp situation. But still, that's how much you have to work. I worked harder in the summer than some weeks during the school year, and and I do shows during the school year. So it's a really tough juggling act for actors who think of it as, I mean, yes, it's something I love to do, but it's also something that, I sort of feel like if somebody's being paid, we should all be paid something.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons that I joined the union, because I felt very committed to that. And I think that actors should be taken care of. We're very often, it's glamorous to be on stage. So there are some producers who think, well, you can just get anybody to do it because everybody wants to do it.
Mhm.
And it is the kind of opportunity that training is beneficial, but it is not necessary. You have people who can be very, very successful and not have very much training. So it's tough. It's tough to sort of make the economic case for paying actors. Whereas all the other skills, you would never think of not paying a costumer. You would never think of not paying a lighting designer.
Right.
But for some reason, some producers want to skimp on actors. Some producers are incredibly generous with actors. And there's no question, but sometimes it's a hard sell, and it's I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon, especially with the rough economics that we're going to be looking at for the recovery of this situation.
Let me throw out.
So
Rebecca,
am I optimistic? Yes, I'm optimistic, but I'm pragmatic as well.
You're pragmatic too. Rebecca Prescott had two questions that I wanted to throw out. First of all, how was the NOLA contract instrumental in building your theater scene after Katrina? And anybody want to take that aside from John, because John was here, I know, but go ahead.
I mean, I can, and you guys can jump in, but I moved here in 2004, and I did have a few problems. I was living in New York and going back and forth, and I had problems getting a union contract down here. But once they put the NOLA contract in, it became easier and stress-free. They took out the health insurance, and I know that's an issue for a lot of actors because they need that health insurance. But down here, most actors already have health insurance, so the producers having to pay that extra amount took the weight off of them, and they were able to hire a lot more equity actors. It built up, I think, a lot of the theaters. I think it helped out a lot of the theaters. It certainly helped out a lot of actors. And
there were theaters that started out sort of at a lower tier, and they've actually moved to a higher tier now, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And it maybe not as fast as some people wanted that to happen, but
right,
we made a huge amount of progress in 10 years.
And so now the question is there's not a you said, John, there's a new contract that went in effect in 18 for 3 years till 2021. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So is there going to be another contract that will extend that will be the similar contract, or is it going to be changing?
Well, I am going to guess there will not be another contract, because before Katrina, a work week is an actor works a week. There were 109 weeks, or there were 109 weeks that actors were working in New Orleans before Katrina. In 2017-18, we hit 795,
wow,
which was 63% growth year over year. Equity's never, ever seen anyone grow that much. The changes went into effect. The next year, we were 535. Now, at the same time, we started to try and transition people to new contracts. But I've just found out that the last 18-19, we were down to 217 weeks of NOLA contract. Now, we also had SPT, but I know they did not make up, 500 and some odd weeks. So the NOLA contract had 3 provisions added to it that have made it an obsolete contract. Its purpose was to become obsolete, but it just happened a little faster than we thought. The salaries are now higher than the first two tiers of the special small professional theater contract that Le Petit and Southern Rep are on. So there's no advantage salary-wise. You have to bond for an entire season and promise roles in every show. So if you're Tennessee Williams Company and wants to use it for one show, you can't. That option is no longer on the table. And then they added the health insurance.
And that's mandatory.
In the last one.
Is that mandatory, right?
What?
Yeah. That'll be mandatory now. The health insurance.
Yeah, the health insurance is now a part of that contract, which raises it another $175 above the base salary, so there's no advantage of using that contract over SPT. And the salary we've been doing 2%, 2%, 4%, 2%, 2%, 4%, and we did 855 for this contract. So it jumped past SPT, and it doesn't have a purpose.
For what, small performance theater? Is that what SPT is?
Small professional theater.
Small
yes.
Professional theater. Okay. Yeah. So essentially, that's one of the tiers that you all are working toward. And I know above all of that is LORT. Somebody had a question, Meredith, for you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about having a LORT theater in the New Orleans area? Do you think that would help?
Oh,
well,
yeah.
And there's one on its way.
Is it likely? It is.
Believe it or not.
Really?
But it is actually not in New Orleans. It's in St. Charles Parish. The Lafon Performing Arts Center is planning on, when they get their night season, musical season in line, of being a LORT. They are currently a TYA, a children's theater for young audience.
League of Regional Theaters, right? LORT? League of Regional Theaters. And they're
resident theaters.
League of Resident, and that's what, like 20 some odd that they have around the country.
I think there's 27.
27, 28. Okay. So just for the sake of people who are just tuning in or don't know about LORT, because we do hear about LORT sometimes, and they just sort of say, "Well, that's a LORT theater," and you go, "Okay." So not everybody knows what that is. So,
oh Lord,
yeah. So again, we've sort of scratched the surface here. I know that everybody's added to the discussion. I really appreciate that. The fact of the matter is that it seems like the union's sort of at a crossroads in many ways due to COVID-19, just as the theaters are at a financial crossroads. And I think that one of the things is that we have to understand that there's going to be probably compromise on everybody's part, that not everything's going to be grabbed for and demanded on both sides, that the theaters can't be unrealistic and the union probably can't be unrealistic, that they've got to be able to maybe compromise on some things in the interim while theater comes back in a gradual way, because they're not going to be able to open up the theater to 100% capacity when they start up, and everybody's going to be hurting. And then the other thing is obviously for the safety of all the actors involved, we have to make sure, and of course the audience. I mean, we don't want to say that we're just going to discard the audience. If a member of the audience walks in with symptoms or whatever and infects everybody, including the resident members of the acting company, it's going to make them shut down for 2 or 3 weeks as well. And what good is it to have a show that shuts down? That you're back to where you were in phase one. So these are all questions that have to be answered, and I know that we're not probably going to come up with all the answers, but we are exploring the questions tonight more than anything else, and letting people know about that. So again, I do appreciate. This is it's a tough situation, and I understand it. But the thing for me is always to understand where Actors Equity is on a lot of these issues, and to define some of the terms. So before we leave, if somebody's interested in becoming a member of Actors Equity, can you explain the system by which they become a candidate, and maybe go over just in a cursory fashion the kind of dues that might be available, that might be necessary for somebody to join? So let's say let's say I've got somebody who has been involved in several productions at Rivertown, done very well, and they feel like they want to now establish themselves as a professional and belong as a member of Equity. What do they have to do? How do they become a membership candidate first before they become? And what are the requirements? For the different aspects of being an MC or a member.
Who wants to take that?
And it's changed and it's different here, but me personally taking my card back in 1997, I did 3 or 4 national tours plus regional work before I even thought about taking my Equity card. It's a big decision. And it's an important decision on that. So I'll let John talk about how you get your Equity card down here, but it's not for everybody. But I'm very glad that I'm Equity, and I've been Equity for.
John, before you start, I want you to try to do this in a minute. So go.
Okay, there are 2 ways to become Equity. One is somebody hires you directly on an Equity contract. The other is you go through the Equity Membership Candidate Program. You can sign up for the Equity Membership Candidate Program at any bonded producer. You earn a point for every week that you work under contract as an EMC and in a show with Equity members. There have to be Equity members in it. It has to be approved. And then when you get to 26 weeks, you're given an option to join. And then you can continue to 50 weeks. At 50 weeks, you either join or you drop or you start over. And you go non-union and you start over and have to earn all your points again.
Wow. That's sort of an unforgiving system, isn't it?
That's
it's like an internship program. Yeah. And so what they don't want is if you can work 50 weeks as a union performer, then you can survive in this business with your union card. And how
long a period is that 50 weeks supposed to be, and not a whole year, obviously?
The 50 weeks can be over any period of time. Okay. Because some people do it straight out. John Hoss was like weeks when he was here. Other people take years to do it. And then when you reach 50 weeks, you have 5 years to join. You just cannot be in an Equity production during that 5-year period. You can do all the non-union theater.
You become a full-fledged member, I guess, at that point, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, the cost, just if somebody wants to become a candidate, what are they looking at in terms of financial outlay?
Well, you pay out $100 when you first join. If you go to the second 2 weeks, you pay the second 26 weeks, you put another $200 on the table. And then the total right now, I think the dues is $1,200. So, and you have the period of time to pay that, I think 3 years, and you can take a percentage up to 15% out of any working salary at that time.
And just because we're rapidly getting to the end, if somebody does do that, that money, as far as it goes, do they have an annual dues that they have to pay after that, after the 12?
Yes. Right now it's $89 every 6 months.
Okay. So approximately $179, something like that, $178 every year. Huh? Yeah.
It just went up. For years it was $52, and it went up. It desperately needed to go up.
Well, listen, I like I said, I can only thank you very much for being here. I thought the comments were wonderful tonight. We had a lot of people, chiming in. And again, Sherri and Meredith, thank you very much for being with us. Sean as well. I mean, you all have done a great job. And, the fact is you're teaching tomorrow's actors and lion's share of what you're doing is really going to be, proven as to how important your job has been 10 years from now, 15 years, when we see these people who you're training, on the stages. Hopefully we have all recovered by that time from COVID-19, and we're moving on to better productions, et cetera. And John, thank you for being here as well to enumerate all the different things that Actors Equity has been doing. I do appreciate you all being here tonight, because it's something that I think not a lot of people understand or know about. And when they look at the programs and they see membership candidate or they see member of Equity, they don't necessarily know what that means, I think the fact of the matter is that for the most part, they are doing a great job to protect their members and to make sure that the conditions are what we would call safe for everybody, and hopefully, the equity union will survive this situation, because I don't think anybody's ever seen anything like this where an entire union's membership are completely out of work. So I hope that they can get whatever they need necessary to survive this. And again, I want to thank you all for being with us. John, thank you for being here. Sean, thank you for being here, and Sherri and Meredith as well. Want to be thanking everybody for joining us tonight. And again, for those of you who did not check out our advanced notices of what's happening, we are going to have a choreographers gathering this coming Friday with Jeanne Buisson, Heidi Molnar. We're going to have also Diane Lala, Malenko Jones Jr., and Daryl Hamilton. I didn't do them in alphabetical order because I couldn't remember all at once, but I got them all out. And of course, next Monday, a week from tonight, Clark and Carol. That's the Clark Gable and Carol Lombard play by Rosary O'Neill. We hope you join us for that. And until that time, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you at the theater.